Welcome everyone to the 80-second celebrity Synastry chart reading where I will be looking into Lewis Capaldi and Niall Horan. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Adeline and it is so nice to meet you. On this channel, I look at the dynamic between two celebrities using astrology. For those new and returning, I take notes on a Synastry chart looking at the personal planet signs aspects and at birth times available house overlays. I share these notes and add my extra insights and interpretations along the way. So if that sounds good to you, subscribe and click the bell to join us weekly and let's get right into it. Starting off with the sun, we have Lewis's sun in Libra and Niall's sun in Virgo. Niall tends to be critical of Lewis. I know I'm going very early so far for this reading. Normally, when it comes to like the first sun, I just let myself simmer. But immediately my brain goes to, because Lewis is a newer artist, or like newer in the industry, so to speak. He's newly found fame. And Niall kind of has been around for a long time. As far as I know, they seem to be a similar age. So my thinking is more so towards like Niall's sort of experience in the music industry. Potentially, you know, him being the sort of more mature one in the industry is where he would feel okay to be critical of Lewis. Lewis gets uncomfortable around Niall and Lewis prioritizes his social life. Lewis's sun overlaid in Niall's first house. Lewis really likes Niall and Niall is energized by Lewis. Lewis is a light in Niall's life and they both feel positive about the other. They both feel familiar with each other and they both boost the other's self-esteem. Probably more so on Lewis's end rather than Niall's, what we've seen so far. Lewis feels like Niall really gets him and they both bring out the best in each other. Okay. Lewis feels he can be himself around Niall and Niall appreciates the admiration he gets from Lewis. Lewis's sun sextile Niall's moon. It's an easy friendship and a fulfilling relationship. There is natural compatibility and they are cooperative with each other. So yeah, with what we have seen, it seems like they are quite like they're very comfortable together. So naturally, I imagine they would be quite cooperative together. Lewis depends on Niall's support. This is interesting. Going back to what I was mentioning earlier, like, you know, Niall's maturity in the industry. Potentially, is Niall like a mentor to Lewis? Considering like this aspect supporting on Niall's support. And what we saw in the beginning, but also Niall's appreciating the admiration he gets from Lewis. Potentially, he is some kind of mentor to Lewis in a way. Niall trusts Lewis's wisdom. Lewis's sun conjunct Niall's Mars. They respect each other and they energize each other, which we're seeing yet again. Lewis sees Niall as too defensive and they challenge and frustrate each other. I mean, potentially maybe like seeing him as too defensive. Potentially, you know, Lewis has more like newer ideas when it comes to music, a bit more modern when it comes to like Niall maybe. And Niall is pretty defensive of like his methods and everything. Niall sees Lewis as too judgmental. Lewis's sun conjunct Niall's Jupiter. It's a friendship which we're seeing again, and they are a lucky couple. They have an optimistic meeting and there's healthy competition. I mean, to an extent, there would be like competition between these two. They enjoy travel together and they are open with each other. They have lots of faith in each other and overindulgence can easily happen. Benefit of the doubt is commonplace, which I mean would make it seems like they both really like each other. They both have quite like a kinship towards the other. So I feel like naturally that would come with some kind of benefit of the doubt. Lewis's sun square Niall's Uranus. It's not predictable or stable, and separation occurs and causes strain. I mean, we did see they enjoy traveling together, but potentially it is a separate thing. And as far as I know, these two aren't like tied to each other in a particular way, as they don't have like a band together. I don't believe they are in a relationship together of any kind in terms of like, you know, a proper relationship or even like a sort of professional relationship, if that makes sense. Like, as far as I know, it's not like Niall is like Lewis's manager or like team member or vice versa, you know. Niall feels trapped by Lewis over time. Oh, interesting. I wonder where this will go. The relationship can start and end suddenly and they cannot rely on each other in the long term. Okay. Lewis grows tired of Niall's inconsistency and Niall changes and challenges Lewis's lie. Lewis's sun square Niall's Neptune. Misunderstandings occur and there is delusions and deception. They both glamorize each other and Niall promises more than gives. Niall is an interesting one in this relationship. And it's a bit concerning considering, like we just saw that Lewis gets tired of Niall's inconsistency. Potentially he is promising a lot more to Lewis than he gives, and he is just naturally potentially a bit more inconsistency. That's why he can't fulfill on what he's said. I hope to see a bit more because what is happening? Niall eventually disappoints Lewis and they both need to be clear about expectations. Yeah, this to me feels like a sort of, how do I put it? Like a verbal agreement relationship. Sounds weird. But it feels like this is a bit more professional, but it's not like there is an official like contract in place, if that makes sense. I feel like there was a bit more of like a verbal, let's, I don't know, make music, whatever, and just like have fun, whatever. I don't think there was a particular contract in place for these two. Niall's Sun conjunct to Lewis's Mercury. They have good communication and they enjoy learning together. I wouldn't be surprised if they're learning together. I mean, kind of, you hope so. In every relationship, but I feel like this more so than others. They share and talk about ideas, and Lewis values Niall's peers. Lewis feels free to speak around Niall, which goes back to how he feels like he can be himself around Niall. I feel like, this seems to be a very good place for Lewis to really express himself and everything. So that's nice. That's there. Niall's Sun, Trine, Lewis's Neptune. They are tolerant and forgiving of each other, and Niall strengthens Lewis's ego. This is interesting. I mean, like, if he is nurturing him, to be like a new artist and all of that, like, I mean, that would kind of boost your ego. Like, you have this very successful person helping you out. They're attuned to each other's feelings, and Lewis inspires Niall to be creative. That's, you would hope so in the music industry.
Now for the intermission. This video is brought to you by me, my Etsy store, Adeline the Astrologer. If you ever watch this and think, hey, I would like her to read my Synastry chart, well, I will. I do personalized Synastry readings on my Etsy store, both basic and detailed. The basic one is very simple to understand. It's not overwhelming at all. It's pretty good for those that are beginners to astrology, just getting the head around astrology, or just as a fun gift idea. The detailed one is just like what I do on my channel, just a lot of insight and interpretation on your chart. So if you are interested in that and everything else astrology and tarot related, readings and gifts, then definitely check out my Etsy store. Links are below. I'm always releasing new things, so definitely check it out if you're interested. You can even just favorite the store just to show your support for free. Thanks for listening, and let's get back to the reading.
So now it's time for Moon. Both their moon signs are in Leo, so they both want to be the special one. So this would go back to the sort of like competition that they have. Potentially they both are like competing to be the sort of like number one person, which is a very awkward, reason. I imagine would be very awkward in the music industry, like when you are collaborating with people. You both do want to be like the number one at the end of the day, though, even if you are collaborating, you're competition with each other. They are both strong individuals and they both have a desire to be surrounded by admirable people. I mean, this makes sense on Lewis's end. Like, we haven't seen anything to suggest he's purposely seeking out Niall, but like, I mean, if he is someone that wants to be surrounded by these, like, highly prestigious people, Niall is kind of that person, and, like, that is really great for Lewis if that is kind of his motive. Can either be a powerful relationship or challenging. I feel like so far we have seen a bit of both. The challenging thing is the sort of, like, longevity and the sort of, the issue of longevity and also the sort of like, consistency of the relationship. Lewis's moon are overlaid in Niall's 11th house. Lewis sees Niall as the dream person. Yeah. So I'm starting to think maybe I'm not he purposely seeked out. No, I feel like, either way, seeked out, got lucky to, make music and, collaborate with Niall, whatever their professional relationship is. I feel like Lewis is very much like, hit the gold mine, hit the jackpot is what they say. I feel like that is sort of like Lewis's attitude. Like, Niall is the dream person. He's this admirable guy. I feel like Lewis is very happy here. They're never really mad at each other, and Lewis feels at ease around Niall. Niall feels relaxed around Lewis, and both feel they can be themselves. See, I appreciate that this is very much repeated consistently. They both feel they can be themselves. I just feel like the issue is, like, I mean, competition, obviously, but also it seems like there is an issue on Niall's end to fulfill his sort of duties, whatever that is. I hope we see more. But it feels like he does seem to be that sort of like older mentor type figure here. Both their moon signs are conjunct together, so they are intuitive with each other and they both have in tune moods. They accept each other's feelings and they like to support each other. Tendency to get passive aggressive. Okay. Lewis's moon conjuncts Niall's Venus. It's mutually supportive and they are a socially popular couple. I wonder if they ever make music together. I'm sure they haven't like collaborated. That would be, potentially something successful for them. They have a lot in common. They like each other even when the relationship is strained. I'm not shocked. Like, there's nothing in this relationship that screams like, that they dislike each other. It seems like they're both very comfortable with each other. Like, yes, there's that tendency to get passive aggressive, but outside of that, the only issues are sort of like, the consistency and, the maintaining of the actual relationship. And particularly on Niall's end, I wouldn't be surprised if they are quite fond of each other, even when there is that sort of like, rockiness when it comes to actually getting together, that consistency. They thrive on each other's energy, which I feel like would be very helpful in creating music. They're a social and business couple, and Lewis is supportive of Niall's creative interests. This is interesting as well because we saw that Lewis aspires Niall to be more creative. I wonder in what way, maybe sort of musically, some new music thing that, Lewis is, exploring, or maybe a completely different endeavor. Social activities are important to share together, and there's a caring and loving bond. Lewis's moon sextile Niall's Mars. They are open with each other, and Niall feels more assertive. I can imagine, I'm sure his ego is very nicely boosted here. There's a mutual fascination, and Lewis makes Niall feel at ease. Lewis feeds into Niall's ego. What did I just say? Niall helps Lewis be more confident and bold, which, I feel like is, as a good mentor should. Both learn about themselves here and can be tumultuous at times. Yeah, I feel like there definitely can, be that tumultuousness and strain here. Lewis's moon sextile Niall's Jupiter. They have good fortune and they're a popular couple. There is honest communication and likely for them to support charities. That is there. I don't know if they ever have, but that is there. Excessiveness could be an issue and they have an intellectual understanding. Lewis's moon squared Niall's Pluto. Jealousy and emotional manipulation is underlying. Oh no, this isn't great. Niall can sense Lewis's unconscious needs and manipulates him with it. Ew. I do not like this, particularly from Niall, who seems to be the more assertive one in this relationship. I'm not liking this. Niall tends to be controlling over Lewis, and there's a deep emotional transformation. They both may need to work through power struggles, and projection is a challenge. They both may need to work through some psychological demons from the past. This took an interesting U-turn. Niall's moon conjunct Lewis's Mars. They both feel more creative together and it's an emotional relationship. I mean, the creativity together would be a bit more on Niall's end. Over time, Niall finds Lewis insensitive and they are involved in each other's lives. Sometimes Niall wishes Lewis was more committed. Okay, so it seems like Niall maybe has issues with Lewis being committed as well. Potentially, I mean, you can't like both of them, bro. Like, they could both definitely be a bit more, problems of maintaining their relationship and everything. Lewis can make Niall feel insecure. I mean, it's not surprising. Like, full respect to Niall, like, his peak has kind of passed while Lewis has, is kind of in his peak at the moment. Niall's desire for closeness makes Lewis feel limited. Interesting. So potentially Niall has particular vision when it comes to maybe how Lewis works or how he should operate in whatever way that may be. And that is not really up with Lewis. So now it's time for Mercury. We have Lewis's Mercury in Virgo and Niall's Mercury in Libra. Lewis gets impatient with Niall, and Lewis teaches Niall to be more practical. Niall teaches Lewis to be more open-minded and fundamentally communicate the same way. Lewis's Mercury overlaid in Niall's 12th house. Lewis has a sixth sense with Niall, and Niall may feel violated. I mean, considering what we saw about Niall with the, manipulating unconscious needs and being a bit more controlling, I'm not, too sympathetic, because then this would be kind of mutual. Lewis may be overwhelmed around Niall, and intuition is strong, can easily become a paranoid relationship. Their Mercury signs are conjunct together, so they think like each other and they share interests. Not surprisingly that they would share some interests together. They enjoy each other's company and they are good friends. I mean, it seems like they do enjoy each other's company. It seems like they do enjoy each other. There just seems to be those, bumps in the road. They value each other and they approach problems the same way. I honestly kind of disagree with this, considering what we have seen. It seems like they do seem to have different approaches to things. Potentially, maybe actual problem solving, they would do it similarly, but I feel like in general, as a blanket, you can't really say they approach things the same way. They see eye to eye most of the time, and they just get each other. Misunderstandings are unlikely, and there's a possibility for heated debates. Okay. Both feel they have found the intellectual match. That's nice. I mean, if they do have a very, intellectual, professional relationship, so yeah. Lewis's Mercury, Sextile, Niall's Pluto. They are interested in unique subjects together, and it's a therapist-patient relationship. I mean, hard to say. I always like to be who's the therapist, who's the patient? Hard to say, I guess, because, although Niall seems to be a bit more assertive, in a way, he seems to be a bit more, taking advantage of his position. Yeah, in terms of, when we saw, the whole, controlling thing, manipulating unconscious needs, it's they get to the bottom of things quickly, so potentially they are quite good at problem solving. Maybe they approach it the same way in terms of they want to, get rid of the problem, but potentially have a little more of a quicker way to go about it, if that makes sense. They share a lot together, and Lewis is fascinated by Niall's depth. They resolve deeper matters together, and they tell each other their deepest secrets. So there definitely seems to be a lot deeper of a relationship, more deeper than your normal, colleague. Lewis uplifts Niall, and they both heal from past relationships together. That is nice. If they are making music together about that, that is actually quite nice. And I feel on Niall's end in particular, it is very, rumored and speculated that all of the One Direction drama and everything didn't affect Niall as that much because, he's happy-go-lucky, he's just, water off a duck's back kind of guy. But I'm sure he would have been impacted by it somehow. And potentially maybe working with Lewis helps him with that. Niall opens up Lewis to new ways of thinking, and he appreciates Lewis's humor. Niall's Mercury opposite Lewis's Saturn. Niall needs to be patient with Lewis, and there's a deep respect for the other's intelligence. Niall may be intimidated by Lewis's practicality, which I feel kind of makes sense because we did see that Lewis teaches Niall to be a bit more practical. Niall might feel like a child around Lewis. Interesting, because I feel when it comes to a lot of other things, I would be why would you feel that way? But, maybe in some ways, especially since Lewis is doing a lot of, teaching from Niall as well, natural communication is difficult. I would in some ways it is. I feel obviously it's not perfect for these two because there does seem to be that actually maintaining their relationship kind of seems to be the challenge for them. It's strong and long-lasting, and both partners subconsciously enjoy their conflict. Not my favorite. I feel if they are musicians, though, that is not the worst thing, because the more emotions and, turmoil they have within yourself, I feel that kind of does create better music. Lewis says Mercury, Trine, Niall says Uranus. Niall sees Lewis as an intellectual companion, and there's open communication. They are perceptive and intuitive of each other. I believe we did see earlier that it was Lewis that was a bit more intuitive here. They work together on goals, and Niall becomes more inventive around Lewis, which goes back to how Lewis is helping them like more creatively. In particular, they encourage each other's missions. Niall's Mercury sextile Lewis's Pluto. This is a repeated aspect, just inverted, so everything from before is further emphasized. But also Niall is fascinated by Lewis's depth. Lewis appreciates Niall's humor. Lewis opens up Niall to new ways of thinking, and Niall uplifts Lewis. So now it's time for Venus. We have Lewis's Venus in Virgo and Niall's Venus in Leo. Niall expects Lewis to be invested, so definitely this sort of like, I don't want to say rigid, but the more of a rigid kind of guy, it seems like, you know, be there, show up kind of guy if they are making music together. Niall makes Lewis feel insecure, and Lewis feels threatened by Niall's bragging. I mean, it kind of makes sense, and also I feel like Lewis should have expected a bit of that when he's entering this, because it seems like he kind of like purposely, in whatever way it was, it would be. We haven't seen a whole lot of the meaning, side note. But in whatever way it was, if whenever Lewis agreed to work with Niall, in whatever way that was, he kind of should have expected some kind of bragging, because he kind of seems to have chosen Niall because of his like prestige and like he's admirable and everything. Lewis's Venus overlaid in Niall's 11th house. Lewis immediately likes Niall and they are comfortable with each other. Niall senses he can be himself around Lewis and they are good friends. The good friends, I mean, not surprisingly so, we keep seeing that throughout the reading. Both share the same social activities and hobbies and they are both open with each other. Another thing, I'm on repeat saying that one. Niall's Venus conjunct Lewis's Mars. Intensity does not fade and they always remember each other. It seems like there is, you know, a bit of an on-off element to this relationship, if that makes sense. Like, it feels like this is, you know, there is longevity to this, but I feel like a lot of, like, gaps in the relationship, in particular, because we have been seeing there's a decent amount of, like, tension and wobbliness to this relationship. They have petty arguments and they know how to push each other's buttons. Yikes. So now it's time for Mars. We have Lewis's Mars in Leo and Niall's Mars in Libra. Niall does not have much of a strong will as Lewis. Interesting. I would have thought it'd be the other way around, because it seems like Niall is very much like sees Lewis as being a bit more like, you know, not in the clouds, but we did see how like Niall expects Lewis to be like very invested in all of that. So I would feel like, you know, it'll be the other way around, but you know, we'll roll. They both get defensive quickly and Lewis feels fulfilled by Niall. So I guess in terms of that, I guess he's not the ego, because I feel like, I don't know why, I don't feel like in this reading there is a lot of like, it seems like contractual work, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel like, you know, this is very much business style. It feels like they are friends, like helping each other out, and like Niall being a bit more of like that senior mental guy. So whatever, I guess, agreement they had verbally, it seems like not Lewis is happy with what is happening, you know, with the deal they had. Niall wants equality and Lewis wants dominance. Oh dear, that's not the best. I mean, they're supposed to be helping each other out. I mean, but that's what I'm saying, like competition, you know, maybe that is where maybe Lewis seems to be a bit more like hungry for that domination and success and all of that, which I feel like makes sense considering he's kind of at his like peak of career. I assume Niall is just, you know, I don't want to say over it because I'm sure he wants to be successful. Who doesn't? But potentially Niall is just taking it easy at the moment. Lewis's Mars overlaid in Niall's 11th house. Niall always feels out of Lewis's reach. Interesting. So I feel like I don't want to make any comment about the meeting because, you know, we don't have anything on that. But I feel like there was a kind of element where Lewis kind of did, you know, try to work with Niall. Or maybe it's just simply a matter of like working with someone of Niall's status and caliber. Niall is intrigued by Lewis's rebelliousness, and Lewis is detached when pursuing Niall. Aha, so we have something when it comes to pursuing. Because, yeah, seems to be that way. I'm glad we have a bit more of a confirmation now. I don't feel like silly saying that. Their Mars signs are sextile to each other, so there's help with competitiveness, not surprisingly so. They do sports together, substantially, like, I don't know, exercising together or something like that, some kind of movement. Fighting can happen quickly. We did see a couple things when it comes to, like, you know, arguments can happen quickly, fighting can happen quickly, arguments can get heated, so I mean, it's not surprisingly so. Like, they are, I assume, would be in a more emotional state when creating music, if that makes sense. They are supportive of each other and they are in sync together. We did see earlier, I believe, that their moons in particular are in sync. Lewis's Mars sextile Niall's Jupiter. Niall encourages Lewis to assert his independence. That is nice. Passing on the torch. Lewis feels more energized by Niall and it is competitive, we're seeing again. Encourage each other to engage in controversial behavior. I mean, when, you know, we did just see, like, Niall's is intrigued by Lewis's rebelliousness. Like, in my head, the way I interpret that is Lewis, you know, stepping out of the box a bit more when it comes to whatever methods. But potentially maybe he literally is like traditional rebellious. They have a lot of fun together and they like to try new things together. Niall's Mars square Lewis's Neptune. Circumstances in meeting were never understood by one of the partners. I mean, that's kind of funny because I feel like this whole reading I've been like, don't want to say anything about their meeting, you know, and make any sort of assumptions. And yeah, it literally is, we haven't seen anything about their meeting because they don't understand it. So it's very fitting. They need honesty to make this work. This goes right back to the beginning where, like, they need to discuss the sort of expectations and everything of this relationship. So that was the final aspect, bringing us to the end of the reading. If you are still watching, please share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this one. I feel like this was a bit of a different one. It's another one of those colleague ones, but I appreciate it seems to be more of like a sort of mentorship one, passing the torch when it seems like, which I feel like is a bit different from the other ones we've done when it comes to like colleagues and everything. If you have made it this far, please consider subscribing for more. I post these readings weekly. Besides that, give this video a like and I will see you guys next time. Bye!